the four horses represented the lower quaternary, and the first part of the lower quaternary is a physical, represented by the white horse, went forth conquering and to conquer. And so this represents the fact that the disciple on the path of becoming like the Christ, and remember the whole book is about how to become like the Christ and follow in his footsteps and do what he did. Because remember what Jesus said. People were commenting on his great works, and he says, yeah, you think I've done great works, but you will do greater works than me. Okay. In other words, he was prophesying about a future time. There would be people that followed in his footsteps, would also become Christ conscious and be able to do even greater works. And Jesus did some pretty great work, so it's that's going to be hard to beat. But it's pretty hard to do a greater work than raise yourself or get raised from the dead. So,
That's a tough act to follow.
Yeah, that is a tough act to follow. So it'll be interesting to see what those greater works are when they eventually come. And we have faith that when molecules are created, that's when the greater works will truly begin to manifest. But so the first horse is a white horse. It represents the person had a crown, but it's the type of crown that represents winning a war. And it represents getting control of your physical body. You got to keep your physical body in reasonable shape so you can be a good servant. If you're sick all the time, you wind up getting help from others instead of serving others. So the person has to keep his physical body in good shape, and also deal with other people, other disciples, and help them along that path. The second is the red horse, which is symbolic of the life force. And the message of that was that the lives at that time, when the life force is, when the red horse comes, it becomes a threat to the lives of the dark forces and the powers that be. Just like Jesus was a threat to the establishment and they crucified him, and many other great people have been threats to the establishment, and then the establishment comes after them. And this is the red horse. This is what the disciple has to go through. Then the black horse. And the black horse is symbolic of the idea that the disciple has to be prepared to sacrifice everything that belongs to this world, everything that he's attached to. He's told to only save two things, the oil and the wine. The oil is symbolic of the path of Christ, and the wine is symbolic of the life of Christ. He must preserve those two things, even though his whole world falls apart. He can't let that go. Those are the two things that he has to keep, symbolized by the oil and the wine.
JJ, can I make a comment of a technical issue?
Sure.
I've noticed your chair's making a lot of noise that's being caught by the mic. I mean, it's not super bad, but maybe in the future you might want to adjust the sound pickup levels.
Oh, okay, well, thanks for telling me that, Joshua. I'll try to sit still. I think I was rocking back and forth a little bit. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, next is the pale horse. And the pale horse, it says death and hell followed with him. And this is symbolic of things that are beyond the disciples' control. He doesn't have control over a lot of things, and so he has to work within his limitations and within the limitations of the people around him. Like even the Christ, when he was here, as I mentioned earlier, he was frustrated with him. He says, "How long must I be with you?" He said a couple of times, because he was frustrated because he was limited by the people he had to work with. And so when the disciple is on the path of Christ, there will be limitations and that he will have to work with. Now we're
Joe, I was going to say, I was listening to a movie this week, and it said that our true character is defined by things that happen to us over which we have no control.
yeah, that's
And
really
he said in a movie, just out of the blue.
huh.
You never know what enlightenment you're
Yeah,
going to
every
get.
once in a while you see a movie where you know, like Star Wars or something, and Yoda says something wise, and every once in a while you get some good quote from just regular movies.
Yeah.
Okay, we're moving along in Revelations chapter 6, and I believe we're on the sixth seal was open, and it says, "And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and mighty men, and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth upon the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand?" So what's interesting about these verses is the interpretation when you see it following the path of Christ is a lot different. And this isn't something that is likely to happen literally, where the Christians are expecting Jesus to show up on a white horse and in the sky, and then everybody will fall down and say, "Hide us from the face of the Lamb." But what the true meaning behind it is associated with the disciple on the path of Christ presents light and truth. And in the opening of the seals, it's revealed the reaction of the various peoples of the world to this release of the light and truth of the teachings of a Christ-like figure, or a figure that's full of light and truth, following the path of Christ. So when the messenger presents higher knowledge, the great and powerful, or the leaders, just are alarmed. Now, think of different times this has happened.
Hey, you muted yourself there, Joe. You are muted. Uh-oh.
Oh, I muted the wrong person.
Yeah, now you're immutable.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Looks like everybody's muted here. Okay. Can you think of a time of a person that presented greater light and truth that the authorities were against and tried to suppress?
Brett Weinstein.
Who?
Brett Weinstein.
Who's he?
He's been talking about the beer bug. He's sort of a famous member of the IDW.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with him. How about somebody in history that we're all familiar with?
You mean like Jesus or Lincoln or Tesla?
Right. Jesus is the prime example, of course. When he presented his message, he kind of fulfilled this: the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, the mighty men, and every free man hid themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains. In other words, they saw this truth and they tried to hide themselves from the truth so they wouldn't have to embrace it. Okay. Others are Galileo is really a great example. He tried to get the Vatican scientists just to look through his telescope so they could see for themselves, and some of them wouldn't even look. They didn't want to look. They didn't want to know, and so they persecuted Galileo. Yeah,
Martin Luther, same thing.
right. And another really good example is Velikovsky. Velikovsky, whether he's right or wrong, it doesn't matter so much but he presented a lot of evidence about what he called the true history of the solar system and events that happened in ancient times. He dug into all the ancient legends from different ancient societies and found commonalities in them, and then presented them. And the scientists were so upset with this that they attempted to prevent him from publishing. Many of this, it's amazing how many scientists were just totally against him even being able to publish or speak or anything. Now, another guy named Ignaz Semmelweis, Hungarian scientist or doctor, and around the middle part of the 19th century, noticed that a lot of people, women giving birth were getting infected and dying. And he had the theory that it was associated with dirty hands. So he instituted the idea of washing hands, doctors washing hands before they deliver babies. And the other doctors thought this was just total nonsense. They thought, well, there's no little tiny bugs on your hand. We can't see any. So they can't even exist. So they thought washing hands was just total nonsense. And they persecuted the guy and eventually had him put in an insane asylum, and he died in prison shortly thereafter. But he was completely exonerated. And a short time later, it was proven that washing hands is extremely important when operating or delivering babies or anything like that. Another guy that the authorities of the world tried to suppress and hide the truth of was William Reich. He invented several things. The orgone generator, which looked like a telephone booth, and you go sit in it and you were radiated, and he claimed it would cure cancer and all kinds of things. Invigorate your sex life, invigorate your life energy. And a lot of people were testified that it really worked. But the powers that be didn't like that idea, and they thought he was a fraud. So they got a summons, and they burst into his workplace, and they tore apart all his equipment and destroyed all his equipment, and they burned 6 tons of his books and manuscripts and notes. So they wanted to completely destroy his work. And this was done by the federal government. And so that was a terrible thing to happen. That happened in the 1950s. And then they put him in jail, and then he died in jail after about 9 months in jail. And who knows if he died through the hands of the state or not. And so that's sad. Since they burned almost everything that he had out, he did have some notes and stuff in Germany that, or France, I think it was, that was preserved, but the main body of his work was just burned. And so I'm not sure if anyone has duplicated his orgone generators or not. So anyway, then there's Einstein. What's Einstein now is he's so widely accepted that if anyone questions anything Einstein come up with, then they're attacked. And same thing with establishment teachings, like on the Big Bang, global warming, the virus, cancer, medical things, you challenge any of these things, you're going to be attacked. In other words, these the great men of the earth want to hide their faces from any truth revealed that upsets their apple cart. They don't want the establishment truth upset. Doesn't matter what it is. Part of it is because we put investments, when you put a large investment in time in something, like let's say you're building a house and you get several things a little bit wrong, but you've got a whole bunch of work into it. The tendency is to say, well, I don't want to backtrack and do that stuff and then rebuild. So I'll just patch it up and make the best of it. And this is a tendency we have, is a lot of people in their belief systems have a lot invested in them. And because they have a lot invested in them, they don't want to backtrack. They don't want to admit that they were wrong, and they don't want to make corrections. But this is what the Christ figure does, is he sees truth from error. He presents the truth. The truth will often conflict with establishment, what the establishment sees as truth. And then they will hide their faces. They will hide themselves from the truth and attack it and try to destroy it.
Yeah,
So,
Joe,
yeah,
and my family is highly divided politically. There are those that listen to nothing but channel 2, 6, 7, the general media. And then there are those that don't, and they get information, but they think for themselves a lot. And we can't talk about politics when we're together because of the anger that's generated, because people who watch the news have such an invested time. They've invested, hours and hours listening to what's presented by the media. And so, they don't want their ideas disturbed. So we disturb them anyway.
Yeah, it's actually kind of fun to disturb people on with erroneous ideas, especially when you have some really good ammunition, because it's I don't know why, but it's a little bit satisfying to see them affected, so they have to face the truth. And I know Curtis really enjoys that part of if he ever gets somebody cornered, so they have to face the truth. It's an interesting.
Yeah, they like to hang up on me. I don't know why.
Yeah. But Jesus wasn't afraid of telling the truth to people. Whoever he encountered, he was completely open about expressing what he saw as the truth, even if it offended people or even if it was at the risk of his life. And
well, that's one thing about you. You research things a lot, from both sides. So, when you present an idea logically, you've usually given it quite a bit of thought both ways.
yeah, what I try to do when I present something controversial, I give one side and then I give what I think is the right side. And
right.
Then let the reader contrast. And most people, they'll just present their side. But you have to present both sides, or else the reader won't be convinced, because he'll think that you don't understand his side. You have to show him, yeah, I understand your side. I understand why you think the way you think. Now it says these people hid. Where did they hide? It says in the dens. Now, the word den comes from the Greek word sepalion, which literally means cavern or cave. So this means they hid in a cave under the rocks and the mountains. Now, a cave is symbolic of consciousness, and a mountain is symbolic of a government, church, or belief system. So those presented with the truth so powerful that it causes even the fixed stars, we're told earlier, to fall. So it talks earlier about the stars falling. In other words, these stars are fixed in heaven, they're fixed beliefs. And when the truth is revealed, it makes their fixed beliefs be removed from their consciousness. And then but they try to avoid this by hiding the truth with their consciousness, and then pulling in the authorities symbolized by the mountains, and the mountain symbolizes all those things that separate and symbolize like governments, churches, belief systems, and they use these also. Yeah, my church says this, or my government says this, or my authority says this, and they do everything they can to escape seeing the truth.
JJ, can I just make a little comment or kind of a question? I'm just thinking, is there no way we can actually bring
Actually, what? I think we lost audio. If we get it back, we'll get the question there. So they try to hide, but the truth just doesn't go away. So do they come out of hiding and examine their facts to see where they'll lead? No, not hardly. Instead, they cry this. They say to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. So they appeal to the authorities, protect us from this blasphemer, lock him up, banish him. We don't want to hear anything from this person that represents the Lamb or the Christ consciousness or the light. We don't want this light, so protect us from this light. So what wrath are they afraid of? They're also afraid, these authorities are afraid of the wrath of the common people. Because if the common people learn they've been lied to and deceived, and the authorities rejected a great light, like maybe the earth being round or whatever, or not the center of the universe, or that washing hands could have saved many lives. If once the public learn that these truths were suppressed, then they'll turn on their authorities. And so this is why the authorities are afraid of wrath. Did you have something, Moshe? Okay, well, if we get audio, we'll pick it up here. Okay, any more comments on that?
JJ, I was asking, isn't there a better way a disciple can actually bring forth a service of light and truth without necessarily having a conflict? You know, Paul said something to the Jews, I became like a Jew in order to win them. To the Greek, I became like a Greek in order to win them. Is there not a better way we can always bring forth service without necessarily having conflict?
It's pretty difficult because if you're in the system and you can see things that are maybe good in the system and work within the system and not produce conflict. But if you see a greater light, that means the only way to implement this greater light is have things in the old system disappear. That's always going to produce conflict. It's like Jesus came and he presented, at the time, the authorities were very strict about the letter of the law. You know, like if anyone committed adultery, just stone him to death. Okay, well, Jesus comes along And he breaks that up and he says, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. And that just about blew him away right there, that he didn't stand up and say, yeah, let's stone this little gal to death. So he went against the traditional teachings, and at his trial, he was accused of trying to destroy the law. And the authorities did not want their law not only destroyed, but he just was trying to lift it to a higher level. And in a way that a lot of we look back on now and we think, well, why would anyone fight against that? But they fought against it because it went against the belief system of the time. And there's many things here now, like there's a lot of people, my wife's been studying a lot of this cancer cures that's out there. There's a lot of people that have treatments that will either just about cure cancer or greatly alleviate it, and they're persecuted by the government, by other doctors, by the powers that be, because they want to go with the current way of doing things. They don't want the current way of doing things changed because they benefit from it. So even though there's a lot of people come up with a lot of really good things that can help with cancer treatment that are natural and doesn't hardly cost any money. If you can't make money from it, well, they don't like it, and they fight against it because they don't want to give up their income. So there's certain things that the disciple will come up with if it goes against the tradition of the times. There's no way to just present it where it's just peacefully considered and love and singing kumbaya. It's just not going to happen. Now, there are times when disciples have been able to work within the structure and make incremental changes and without strong persecution. But if you make a significant change, if you present light that is a couple steps ahead of where the darkness presently is, and there's going to be conflict. There's hardly any way around it. Okay.
Well, look at Nikola Tesla. If it hadn't been for him, would still be in the Dark Ages. There would have been no new age of enlightenment, no atomic age, no nuclear age. The industrial age would have been as high as we could have gone. And look at the opposition that he had to go through just to get alternating current on the table.
Yeah, and who was his main enemy concerning
Edison.
alternating current? Yeah, it was
Thomas
Edison did everything he could to stop him.
And the reason he was, the reason he was such a tremendous adversary was because Edison had already proven, he'd already come up with incredible inventions like the light bulb and the phonograph, and he had paved his own way into a greater measure, but he'd only gone so far, and he hit this glass ceiling that Tesla shattered. But people were already behind Edison, and if it hadn't been for Westinghouse backing Tesla, we'd still be in the dark. We'd have little batteries, alternating or direct current batteries about every 200 or 300 feet.
And later on, Westinghouse found he couldn't control Tesla, so he became his enemy later on.
Yeah, and Tesla died a pauper. He was on the path of releasing technology for power waves. He had already mastered radio waves, and he was going to give people free power.
Yeah, he wanted to make power free for everybody, and that's what turned Westinghouse against him, because Westinghouse wanted to make money off whatever Tesla come up with.
Yeah.
So
pretty fascinating part of history, but you got to remember, perfection brings imperfection to the surface.
good drives evil from the form of man and time and space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this part of it and this sixth seal will continue, and to the next section talks about the angel of the east and the 144,000. After these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not neither the sea nor the trees till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. And I heard the number of them which were sealed. And there were sealed 144,000 of all of the tribes of the children of Israel. First, it's interesting and affirming to note that the angel of the east had the power to seal in the forehead. What do you think that means?
Well, the East is always synonymous with enlightenment.
Right. And the sixth seal that's broken here represents the sixth center. And what's the sixth center, Curtis?
The Ajna Center, the Buddhic plane,
Right. What's commonly called the third eye.
third eye. Yeah,
Where
your intuitive
the
point.
higher vision is open. The person develops the intuition.
Right.
And so in other words, these 144,000 being sealed represent 144,000, which is a symbolic number of people that have opened the vision of the third eye, that can see through the illusion. And that's an important thing to see through, is the illusion. There's so many things that trip up people of good intent. Even though a person is trying to do his best, they often cannot see correctly. And this is the great part about the third eye being open, is that the disciple begins to see through the illusion to what is real and what is true. So the seal on the forehead, that's the important thing. And let's go through the verses here. First part here, it says, after these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth or the sea or on any tree. So what do you suppose the earth represents here? Four angels standing on the four corners of the earth.
Materialism, physical plane, your
Phys-
beliefs.
You got the physical, right? It represents the physical body. Okay. And the four corners of the earth, again,
Those four lower lower quaternary.
right, lower quaternary. So you have the earth represents the body. The four corners represents the lower quaternary, which we covered by the four horsemen, also represented the mastering of the lower quaternary. Okay, the four angels stand for the positive and spiritual energies that are manifest through the lower self after the first four seals are opened. Now, the four winds stand for energies of the four centers of the lower self, the lower quaternary, where they kind of blow out of control, but they have to be eventually contained. Unless they are held under the power, they have to be held under the power of these four angels, because the four angels are told that they hold these four winds. So in other words, the lower quaternary has to be linked to the higher part of ourselves so that they can hold these four winds of the lower self so that they do not blow destructively. So they are held. They have to be controlled. You have to control your emotions. You have to control your appetites. You have to control your lower mind, your vital force. Once these things have to be controlled by these four angels, so to speak. The scripture continues. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of God. And he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth and the sea, neither the trees, till we have sealed the servants of God in their foreheads. So this angel from the east represents the spirit and intelligence of God manifesting through the center in the forehead. So you have the higher intelligence of God when you focus on in the forehead, where the book of Revelation also says the name of God is also there. In other words, the presence of God is there. You focus there and bring in this angel from the east. What does this mean? Now, Curtis mentioned that the meaning of the angel from the east. We're going to talk about that. What did you say the angel from the east represented? The east?
It represents enlightenment. You know, even Jesus used the word lightning coming from the east to the west.
Right. He talked about when the presence of Christ makes a reappearance. He says it will be as lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west.
Right.
Even so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. It's interesting how much the east is associated with enlightenment. For instance, we have this about the wise men. He says, now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod, there came wise men from the east. So, in other words, wise men that are enlightened came and they recognized the Christ. Then we also have another interesting reference.
Wasn't the star out of the east?
Right. The Star of Bethlehem, it says they saw it in the east and it went before them. Okay. So everything that's really good and enlightening in the scriptures seems to come from the east. And the east represents enlightenment. And even today, that's kind of physically happened to a large degree. We have a lot of enlightening teachers coming from the east, like Yogananda and the Bhagwan and different teachers coming that Swami, the Beatles got with, and
Ramahansa.
And also all the writings of Alice A. Bailey come from DK from the east.
And the sun rises in the east.
Yeah, so the east is an interesting representation of enlightenment.
You'd think it'd be from the north.
Yeah. Yeah, the north represents mystery,
Spirit.
if I think right.
Yeah, and Texas is further east than Utah, just saying.
Good point. You
Let's
might
all go to New York.
get some feedback from Joshua. He'll claim his father east of New York, William. So the east represents the Christ energies, love, wisdom found in the heart center, and they ascend to the forehead. So the heart center represents the Christ energies, but it ascends to the forehead, and those two working together produce tremendous enlightenment in the disciple. So the great angel tells the lower four angels to not allow hurt to come to the earth. Okay. And so you got to keep your the physical body in reasonable shape to be a good servant, to be a useful servant. And So on the other hand, there have been some very good disciples and avatars in the past that have had physical problems, but what they have done is they just ignore them and they continue their work no matter what their physical problem is. But it's a lot better off if you kind of can keep your body in reasonable shape so that you can focus on your work and not have to worry about your physical body. But there have been many great teachers that have had quite a few physical problems to deal with. So that's not a black and white thing. But Alice A. Bailey had a lot of physical problems near the end of her life, but she just mentally forced herself to continue her work, even though she had some bad physical problems. Same thing with Madame Blavatsky, who was in really bad shape when she wrote The Secret Doctrine. It's amazing she was able to think as clearly as she was to write such a detailed book like that.
Well, she was highly overweight and she smoked and
Oh.
cigars and drank, you know, she's quite a character.
Yeah, she didn't drink though, but she did smoke. She smoked 200 cigarettes a day.
Well, that's worse than drinking.
Yeah.
200 cigarettes a day, that's a carton.
Yeah, it destroyed her kidneys.
She said she had to smoke to stay in the body. So her power was so great.
Keep her grounded.
Yeah, you wonder if that was just an excuse or not, but it might be something to it. I know when I was on a really light diet, the meat-less diet, just eating fresh fruits and vegetables, that I just didn't feel like making a living. I would just wanted to do the spiritual work. I had to change my diet to kind of lower my vibration so I could focus on taking care of my family. But there's some truth to what Ed said, and maybe that did help keep her grounded. But I think she went overboard there with 200 cigarettes a day. It definitely hurt her health. But now the C, what would that stand for?
Emotions.
Right. The C stands for feeling nature. So likewise, the disciple is to not allow negative emotions to create harm. Okay. Now, it says he's not allowed the trees to be hurt. What were the trees here? Trees represent our ambitions, our goals, our ideals, which grow up to life in the physical plane. This means we must just take care of our basic physical needs. So, hurt not the earth or the sea or the trees. In other words, take care of the basic necessities, take care of your body, keep your emotions stable, and take care of the things, your activities that you have to perform to the normal physical world. In other words, the injunction of Christ comes to mind is be in the world, but not of the world. So you have to be in the world enough to be able to function, but let your consciousness not be of the world. So when the disciple is free from worries of physical health, emotional well-being, financial stability, thus has the power to serve and to learn the true name of God associated with the sixth seal. This takes him, when he learns the true name, he learns what is meant by the name of Jesus Christ. Now we're told in the writings of Paul that there is one name upon whom all beings in heaven and earth are named, and there's no name higher than this name, which is Jesus Christ, okay? So if there's no name higher than Jesus Christ, what would be the name of the Father?
Jesus Christ,
Right. And what would be the name of his
his
disciple?
Father.
Right.
It'd all be a bunch of the Jesus Christ Club.
Right. In other words, the Christ is a chain of beings. And so it says it's the highest name in heaven is Jesus Christ. And the name of Jesus Christ basically means anointed to deliver. And the message behind the name of Jesus Christ is that when you take a step forward, you have a duty to turn around and find your brother that is in need and lift him up to where you are. And this is the chain that is an eternal chain that no matter where you are, there's somebody that helped lift you up, and you have a duty to turn around and lift others up. Now,
That would be the chain of salvation.
right. And there's no higher name than that. In other words, there's nothing higher you can do than to turn around and maybe even delay your own evolution, your own progress, and help others to be lifted up to where you are. And then when you do that, somebody will turn around and grab you and lift you up higher. So if you want to be lifted up higher, you turn around and help others to take the step. And when you take the step, then you create karma that is an energy that is sent upward like an invocation. And some higher life will recognize that you are in need of assistance, and they will pull you up. And this name is the highest name under heaven, because there's no higher work to do than assisting our brothers and sisters on the path to return. So that's interesting that, and this, we're told later on that the disciples, the 144,000, have the name of God in their forehead. In other words, in their forehead, in their thoughts, they have imprinted the name of Jesus Christ, which means anointed to deliver. I want to do what I can to be of service to my fellow man. And there's no higher calling or name than that. And even in the sacrament prayer it's given, we take upon ourselves the name of Jesus Christ. But people don't understand what that means. They just think it means to think about Jesus or something like that. But it's more than that. It's to become like him, to do the same work that he does. Then the scripture continues, and I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all of the tribes of Israel. We're going to talk about that next week, that it's not to be taken literally. There aren't going to be 112,000 out of each of the literal tribes of Israel, but it has a more deeper meaning than this. But considering the 144,000, consider this. We have 7 centers, 7 major chakras of the spine. There are 48 petals in the 5 centers that's up the spine. And then in the center of the forehead, you have 2 major petals with 48 each, equaling 98 petals, or 96 or 98, I think. And then you add these together, you get 144. Multiply this by the number of petals and the crown center, which is 1,000, and you get 144,000. And DK says this is where the symbolic number of the 144,000 comes from. You have an interplay of the various petals in the 7 chakras, producing 144,000 different effects.
Doesn't it also say in a host into innumerable dimension?
Yeah, in addition to the 144,000, so
Right.
somewhere, yeah.
So for
Okay,
people who think there's just 144,000 that'll be saved, there's that's kind of funny.
I've always thought 144,000 is like a symbolic of a molecular cell, and it's just one of many that will eventually materialize. Yeah. And then there's associates, which are an innumerable company. Okay, my friends, we will plan on seeing you next week at 10 o'clock. And any more comments or questions before we wrap it up?
Well, I think the
If you-
concept that you were talking about is, and we've given speeches on this, is liberation through service. We liberate ourselves by, and Ed knows this. We talk about this a lot in our triad. If you want to liberate yourself from the poles of materialism and the lower quaternary, just be of service, however, wherever, with whomever you can.
Yeah, if you don't know what to do, find some service to render, and then out of the blue, you will have help up here. To help
Even
you.
if it's just to mow your neighbor's lawn, if you start there, wherever.
Yeah. Okay, okay.
I wanted to mention, if you go into Zoom, you can adjust like the mic pickup settings so that it'll diminish the amount of background noise that comes through.
Okay, but you mean you talking about my chair squeaking?
Yeah,
Maybe I ought to wear the earphones again. That would prevent that if it's too much of a distraction. Yeah, this mic, it really picks stuff up. I never know what it might pick up. I'll have to listen to it to see if it's too much of a distraction. Okay, my friends, we will plan on seeing you next week. Until then, have a good week, and don't forget Tuesday morning at 5:41 Mountain Daylight Time is the exact time of the full moon. See you then.
See you then.
Thank you. I joined the group.
everyone.
Support your local triad.